Hi, my friends. Today I want to present you a new story. Enjoy watching it.
I used to love seeing my name on the glass office door, Charlotte Fletcher, Chief Operations Officer. It glinted every morning in the sunlight that sliced through the blinds, a daily reminder that I built something, earned something. Until the day I walked past it and saw a second name etched below mine, Martin Fletcher, Strategic Development Advisor. My brother. He'd been abroad for 8 years, living off family trust funds and posting cocktails from Barcelona rooftops. Now he was back, and somehow, without any official memo or team introduction, had a title and an office down the hall from mine. I blinked, half expecting it to be a prank, but the lettering was permanent, carved into the same glass I'd once believed marked my success. At lunch, I found Mom and Dad in the executive dining lounge, seated at their usual table, quietly sipping espresso as if nothing had changed. "Did you approve Martin's new position?" I asked, setting my tray down too hard. My mother didn't look up from her cup. "We thought it was time he got involved. You've been carrying the company alone for too long." My father added, "And it's still a family business, Charlotte." I stared at them both, heat rising in my chest. "So you gave him a title? An office? Without even telling me?" "He's your brother," my mother said softly, as if that explained everything. That night, I stayed late in the office, long after the janitor had passed by with his mop and nod. I wasn't working, I was unraveling. I opened the legal cabinet in the CEO's archive vault using my personal clearance and began flipping through files I hadn't touched in years. That's when I saw it. A quiet transfer of ownership. 70% of Fletcher Technologies, signed over to Martin 6 months ago. My heart dropped. I scanned the document again. There were our parents' signatures, elegant, confident, and Martin's crude scrawl at the bottom. My name was nowhere. No one had even considered telling me. I gripped the edge of the cabinet to steady myself. 10 years of unpaid overtime, canceled holidays, and skipped birthdays, all for a company I no longer owned. They didn't just sideline me. They replaced me. And the worst part? Everyone must have known. The way the board had started looping Martin into emails. The private meetings, the polite silences in rooms that used to buzz with collaboration. The betrayal wasn't sudden. It had crept in, whispering behind my back. I locked the cabinet, walked back to my office, and stared at my name etched in glass. For the first time, it didn't feel like a monument. It felt like a tombstone. The following week, I sat through a strategy meeting like a ghost, present but invisible. Martin occupied my usual seat at the head of the table, legs crossed like he'd been born into leadership. He nodded as if he understood the financial reports. He didn't. "I think we should lean into aggressive expansion," he announced, mispronouncing the name of our German supplier. A few of the executives chuckled politely. I didn't. I watched. No one looked at me. I tried speaking up once. "Actually, our Q2 data shows a decline in," but Martin cut me off with a raised palm. "Charlotte, let's not dive into the weeds." He smiled like a man patting a dog. The room fell silent. Afterwards, I caught Julia, our CFO, in the hallway. "Why didn't you back me up in there?" She shifted uncomfortably, glancing around. "It's not personal, Charlotte. The board, they want Martin to lead now. Your parents made that clear." I blinked. "So that's it." She sighed. "I'm sorry. You deserved better." That night, I didn't cry. I paced. My apartment was too quiet, too clean, sterile from all the time I'd spent at the office. I stared at the framed photo of my parents shaking hands with our first major investor. I'd been 22, glowing with pride. They used to say I was the engine of Fletcher Technologies. Now I was just an unwanted passenger. The next morning, I walked into the office late, on purpose, and found Martin in my chair, feet propped on my desk. "I figured we'd share the workspace," he said, not moving. "Might as well consolidate power, right?" I stared at him. "You don't know what you're doing." He shrugged. "I don't need to. I just have to smile while other people do the work. And when it crashes?" He grinned wider. "That's what you're for." Or were. I turned and walked out, past the boardroom, past the glass that still bore my name, and out into the sharp morning air. For the first time in 10 years, I didn't feel obligated to stay. I just felt done. The day after I walked out, I sat in my car with my laptop balanced on my knees and stared at a blank document. No emails to reply to, no crisis to solve. For once, silence didn't mean peace. It meant disorientation. My world had rotated on its axis, and I wasn't sure where I stood. I typed one name into my browser, Eleanor Drake, my old mentor. She had left Fletcher Technologies 6 years ago when my father refused to promote her. She'd warned me. I hadn't listened. I dialed her number before I could overthink it. Charlotte? She answered after 2 rings, her voice crisp with surprise. Are you all right? No, I said simply. But I want to be. We met for coffee at a quiet spot downtown. She looked the same, sharp eyes, steely posture, the kind of woman who could dismantle a man with a sentence. I read the news, she said. Martin Fletcher appointed executive director. Didn't realize nepotism was contagious. I let out a bitter laugh. They gave him 70% of the company behind my back. Eleanor's brows rose. That's not betrayal. That's theft with a family discount. We talked for an hour. By the end, she handed me a card. I'm building something new, something ethical. If you're ready to rise again, call me. That night, I stared at the business card like it held the key to another life. Because maybe it did. The next day, Martin texted me. Client worried about the Belgium rollout. Can you handle a quick call? I didn't respond. 5 minutes later, another. Charlotte, I need your input. Then a third. You're seriously going to abandon us? I shut off my phone. I wasn't abandoning anything. I was starting over. I pulled out a notebook, opened to a blank page, and wrote across the top in thick black ink. My name is Charlotte Fletcher, and I don't belong to them anymore. 2 weeks passed. I didn't return a single message from Martin or my parents, yet their silence roared louder each day. Then came the breaking point. It was a rainy Thursday afternoon when I received a call, not from Martin, but from a longtime client, Helena Walsh of Coromed. Charlotte, she said, voice tight, I can't work with Fletcher Technologies anymore. Your brother showed up late to our meeting, pitched a completely unvetted proposal, and called our product line. She paused, clearly restraining herself. Too complex for his taste. My stomach turned. Helena, I know it's not your mess anymore, she said, but I thought you should know, we're moving our $7.5 million contract. Honestly, we only ever stay for you. I thanked her quietly, hung up, and sat in stunned silence. Coromed was just the beginning. By Monday, I'd heard from 3 other former clients. One by one, they pulled their contracts. Fletcher Technologies wasn't a business anymore. It was a ship with a hole in its hull. Then came the call from my father. Charlotte, he said, clearing his throat. We've made mistakes, but Martin's young. He needs guidance. We need you. No, you need a leader, I said flatly. And you gave that role away when you handed him the keys. We'll make it worth your time, executive pay, equity restoration. Reporting to Martin, I asked. A pause. Well, yes. But I ended the call. Later that night, a text from Martin lit up my phone. They're blaming me. You happy now? I stared at it, unblinking. No, I wasn't happy. But I was free. 6 months later, the building still bore my name on the glass. Fletcher Technologies. But the inside was hollow. Empty cubicles, unpaid invoices, and the stale air of failure clung to every surface. I stood across the street, coffee in hand, watching as movers carted out the last of the company's assets. A bankruptcy notice had been taped to the door 2 days ago. Martin had burned through everything: client goodwill, investor trust, operational reserves. My parents stopped returning my calls weeks ago. Perhaps shame had finally sunk in. Or perhaps they still couldn't admit they gambled their legacy on the wrong child. A familiar voice broke my thoughts. You came to watch the funeral? It was Helena Walsh. She smiled faintly. Only to confirm the death, I replied. She tilted her head. And the rebirth? I turned to her, curious. We've got room, she said. You've got the brain, the grit, the trust. And as we walked into the sunlit morning, I didn't look back, not even once. A week later, I became head of the division with over 40 employees. I launched a mentorship initiative for young women in tech, those like me who'd once been asked to give everything for nothing in return. In the evening, I came home and saw a message from my mother on my phone. We were wrong. You were always the legacy. I hope one day you can forgive us. I stood motionless, reading it twice. 3 times, but I didn't respond. Instead, I poured myself a glass of wine and walked to the window. The city below glistened under the rain. It reminded me of who I used to be, Charlotte Fletcher, the tireless daughter chasing a seat at a table she'd already built. Now, I sat at my own table. For the first time in my life, I wasn't begging to be seen. I was seen. I wasn't trying to preserve a legacy that was never mine. I was building one of my own.
Friends, what do you think of this story? Write your opinion in the comments. Would you like more stories? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button so you don't miss any videos. See you tomorrow.